all for joining us this evening. And for folks watching from home, welcome as well. As always, folks, if you haven't already signed in for the evening, we'd love for you to sign in at the end. That's how we get our head count for our history talks. You can also use that form to sign up for the newsletter. Okay. My name is Felicia, and I'm the museum coordinator for the Lacey Museum. Our speaker tonight is Tracy Rebstock, who will be talking about the Lacey Historical Society and their legacy. Before we dive in, I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement and some museum news. The Lacey Museum is on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically Southern Lushootseed speakers, Nisqually, and Squaxin Island. We acknowledge and remember not to forget those tribal people that are named but not recognized today and absorbed into other tribes for survival or were relocated. We recognize the ancestors and their relations that are still here. Lacey and the South Puget Sound region are encompassed by the Treaty of Medicine Creek, signed under duress in 1854. We respect and affirm tribal sovereignty, and as a part of the city of Lacey, we work with the Nisqually and Squaxin Island tribes in government-to-government partnership. Alrighty, so on to some museum updates. We'd love to see you at the museum. I know I say that every month, but we really mean it. We are open Thursdays and Fridays, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Right now, the Smithsonian poster exhibit called Journey Stories is still up at the museum. The exhibit explores how movement has shaped our nation with a look at American expansion and migration from the earliest settlers and Native American displacement to the effects of transportation on modern mobility. Our tours will include local stories, so I recommend you stopping by to check it out. I will be there to give those tours. We are also starting our summer programs at the museum next month, so anytime that the museum is open during June, stop in for a crafting activity to learn about weather vanes and some history about Lacey Farms. This program is geared for children, but adults who are big kids at heart are more than welcome to join in on the fun. I know that I personally had a lot of fun building this for the photo to show everyone, so I recommend it. Oh, and we are selling Thurston County Historical Journals after the completion of tonight's program. So if you are interested, those will be on the back table, and we can take card or cash payment. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the 2023 recipient of the Ken Balsley Historian of the Year Award. At the City Council meeting held on May 4th during the Lacey History Month, Dr. Thelma Jackson was honored for her work researching Black people in Thurston County, culminating a book, Blacks in Thurston County, Washington, 1950 to 1975, a community album. Dr. Jackson was nominated by 2022 Historian of the Year and former Historical Commissioner Seth Huff. The Lacey Museum wanted to send our congratulations again to Dr. Jackson on being Lacey's Historian of the Year. Okay. This is our last history talk of the season. We will be taking a break for the summer, but do not fret. We will be back for our next season in September. We will be sending out a short survey soon to hear your feedback on what types of talks folks would like to see in the future. So if you wanted to receive that survey, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Okay, so for tonight's presentation, as always, we will hold our Q&A section at the end. Erin will be monitoring the questions online. So for folks at home, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to submit those. The Q&A button should be on the bottom of your screens. And then for folks here, I will be walking around with a microphone if you have any questions so that folks at home can hear your questions as well. And now I would like to introduce tonight's speaker, Tracy Rebstock. Tracy is a historian and researcher. Her education includes a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Cincinnati, a master's in information and library science from Kent State University, and a master's in public history from Eastern Washington University. She is a former librarian and archivist. Her passions include connecting people with information and researching local history. She has been a member of the Lacey Historical Society since April 2022. Thank you, Tracy, for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, let's see if this goes off to the. It's all right. It's like, are we here? Okay, all right. I'll just talk for a minute. So, presentation tonight is on the Lacey Historical Society, a history from 1980. Let's see if I can get that better. 1980 to 2023. And I recently became a member in 2022 to the Lacey Historical Society. I have a couple of friends who are in it or were in it, and they talked me into getting involved as I took a little pause, a gap year from my job in October 2022, and then I ramped up with a more active role as the acting treasurer, as the former treasurer left at the beginning of the year. So I have worked with other historical societies in my career, but this has been kind of fun and interesting, and hopefully you find this interesting too. We're going to step back in time a little bit. Historical societies, they've been around a long time. In general, according to the American Historical Association, usually most of them formed in the late 19th century, early 20th century. It was usually local historians, amateur historians who would come and collect the memories of the people living in the area. They really had a strong sense of place, often with family roots that had been there for a long time. There was often a legacy. It was often based on white settlers, and there was a lot of nostalgia around historical societies. And this photograph is a representation of some of Lacey Historical Society's photo albums from the past. They usually do things like this at their annual meeting. So here in Washington, we're no different. We have a lot of historical societies, and we're also lucky enough to have an RCW that covers our state historical societies. That's RCW 2734. If you'd like some light reading on historical societies, I recommend you bring up that RCW, the Revised Code of Washington, and learn a little bit about it. But we have one in Eastern Washington at the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture, and then we have one in Western Washington that covers in Tacoma, the State Museum, State Historical Museum. But here in the area, we do have a lot of people who are very interested in their local history, including Lacey, Tumwater, Olympia. There's actually the Tenino, which is the South Thurston Historical Society, the Elm Prairie Historical Society, and Rainier. And there's a lot of other ones that are out there that often don't have a web presence, but if you're local to the area, you'll know that they exist, and they're always looking for more people. The image up here on the screen is from the Woodland Hotel, and thanks to our friends at the Lacey Museum for that image. So historical societies versus historic or historic commissions. This is a question we get quite a bit when you're looking at an area. This is true for pretty much anywhere as well as here locally. Historical societies are typically a 501c3, a nonprofit. Sometimes they're just a group of interested volunteers who are very attached to the history of their area, and they often have a board of trustees. They often have officers. Anyone interested in the area may join. And what's true for a lot of historical societies is they may be part of a historical society, but maybe not live in the same area, but maybe that's where they grew up. Historic commissions or historical commissions are usually a local government group that are part of a city or a county. And usually it's an advisory board with appointed positions. Most of the time those members have to be they have to be actually living in the area, wherever that is. And in the case of Lacey, Lacey has both a historical society and a historic commission. So when you do a history of someplace, what do? For me, can you do a history for something if it wasn't your lived experience? I am not from Washington State. I'm from the great state of Ohio, born and raised, and moved to the state of Washington in 2008, where I started in Spokane and did not move to this area until 2013. But that's the case for a lot of historians. A lot of historians are writing history for not their lived experience. They are usually researching in documents and things to find out about something that's of interest to them. And usually you use primary source materials. Maybe you go to your local library, you go to your local archive. You might have a museum that has resources to do your research. And you may also have secondary source materials that maybe a history has already been written about the place or something. And then you may also sometimes encounter oral histories of an area. Sometimes there's recordings that are within an area, and you can go and listen to the voices of the past to learn about something you're researching. Could we wait till the end of the presentation? Okay, all right. So my process, how did I do the research for the Lacey Historical Society? So I've been processing the papers of the Lacey Historical Society from 1980 to 2023, the president's papers, the treasurer's papers, the secretary's papers, and that includes minutes, agendas, newsletters, founding documents, projects, research files, and these records have lived either in the Lacey Museum or in other people's houses, and over time, they've kind of come together as a collection. And also, reading through the records, catching little snippets of history as I go. I also took a look at other resources. So what was really helpful in my research about the society was to use the state archives. I went to the state archives and looked at the City of Lacey's minutes, the Historic Commission minutes. I did some research on the Secretary of State's corporation's website and learned about incorporation and bylaws and different types of thing. And as you can find out in almost any research that you do, sometimes there are holes. So, Lacey. This here is an aerial photograph from 1957, I believe. And just a side note, there's a lot of aerial photography that was taken of the area for planning and different purposes, and there are aerial photographs available in the Washington State Archives under Thurston County, and then there's also some available probably through the city and through the museum. So the City of Lacey incorporated in 1966, but before it incorporated, it was a series of small communities. Woodland, also known as Lacey, Hawks Prairie, Union Mills, and St. Clair. The post office was put in 1891, and there were established pioneer families in the area. And there was also families who came in for the military, for Fort Lewis McChord over the years. And then there was a lot of farming, logging, mushrooms, lavender, resorts, and lakes. So, the society arrives on the scene in 1980. This is the most current logo of the Lacey Historical Society with the Lacey School in the background. The Lacey Historical Commission started in 1979, and the Civic Commission and Planning Commission were very interested in Lacey development at that time, and there was an acknowledgement that some of the people who were involved in the city and the Civic Commission were saying, hey, let's try to save some of the history of Lacey in the area. There was a fear of losing the local history, and there was a concern that there was an out with the old and in with the new. So wanting to try to see if there was some way to capture some of the stories, some of the history, save some of the buildings. It's kind of why the Lacey Historical Society was formed. So the Lacey Historical Society was formed in 1980, September 26, 1980. And these are the early incorporators. And those forms all the forms of their early corporation can be found on the Secretary of State's website. including their articles of incorporation, their bylaws, and all of their annual filings going from 1980 up to recent, so to 2023. There were a couple gaps in those where the incorporation had lapsed, but they did incorporate as a nonprofit. Their purpose was, and this is directly from their bylaws, articles of incorporation, for educational and charitable purposes relating to the promotion, collection, preservation, and interpretation of Lacey, Washington, and environs for the Lacey Museum. And they also applied for a 501c3 with the federal government. Their first mailing address was at St. Martin's College. Their first president was Father John Scott. And their first organizational meeting was held October 26, 1980, in the newly dedicated Lacey Museum. Okay, so this is Lacey's first city hall, police station, and fire station, all in the house. And if you go and visit the Lacey Museum now, you will wonder how they all fit in there. But the museum started in the former city hall, and as they were tearing down buildings to make room for something new, this was originally on Pacific Avenue, Ken Balsley from the Civic Commission suggested this building for, quote, "the uniqueness of the building and its particular background makes it one of the truly historical buildings available in the city." They wanted to pick a historic building to use for the museum. And thanks to the Lacey Women's Club, they found a home for the museum. So once that building was taken up and moved, they moved it to its current site. In June of 1979, the suggestion was to relocate the building because the Lacey's Women's Club had offered up land for the museum. So that's what it looks like now. I took that picture just the other day, as a matter of fact. So the Lacey Museum, they had a day of recollection held on March 27th, 1980. The longtime residents attended and identified photographs and memorabilia. Ken Balsley reported this to the Lacey City Council at a city council meeting. There were about 50 people interested in this newly formed historical society. The dedication for the museum was held on October 29th, 1980. And the Historical Society met in the museum for many years, and they volunteered at the museum. They also helped collect papers, photographs, and artifacts. And from an early charter members list, there were about 47 members between the years of 1980 and 1984. So that's a pretty good-sized group of people. Their long-term plans in the 1990s were how to involve the society more in the museum. So they wanted to know how they could be more involved. They wanted to help establish the difference between the society and the commission and what their roles were and who does what. And they also had a lot of questions about if someone loaned something to society from the community, how would the museum handle that in their collections and donations? And that was in the mid-90s they were talking about that. And I think that's still a question today. This is the Gallagher House. Maybe some of you remember where it used to be, but it used to live across the street from the school on the corner of Lacey and Carpenter. The Lacey Historical Society did have some properties over time. They managed some properties. This one, they moved it, and their idea was to create a children's museum in it. They also had two additional houses, the Stroh House and the Mesplay House. The Stroh House moved onto the property close to the museum and was eventually burned by the Lacey Fire Department. because there were some problems with it, and they decided they would use it to practice. And the Lacey Fire Department had a fun day for all. They did call people out to come and watch. The Mez Playhouse moved closer to Union Mills. It used to be on the hill where Music 6000 is today, and it was moved from there to over by Union Mills. This is what the Gallagher House looks like today. I just took a picture. Things are not quite blooming out there just yet, but I bet you they are now. The Gallagher House, they had a lot of different ideas for it over the years. They kept a renter, actually, rented it for many years, but they ended up selling the house in 2018. Much of the house was in disrepair, and there was concern that it might be a liability to the society. According to the president, they were doing some research on how much it would take to repair the house, and just to do a couple minor repairs would take $11,000, and that's how much they had in the bank. So they were like, well, if we did that, that wouldn't even bring the house up to what it would need to do, so they decided selling it was the best option. So this plaque can be found just behind the museum, off to the side. If you're facing the museum, off to the right. And this is a big part of what the society did over the years, the Memorial Garden or Remembrance Garden. They did these plantings to honor citizens from the past and present in Lacey. It's all over the grounds around the museum. You can kind of see in the map there where all the different plantings are arranged. And they created an archival quality photo album to go along with this to showcase all of the plantings and honor all the people who had items planted in their memory. So there's an older photo of it. There was an annual tree planting ceremony. It started in about 1986. Usually a local Boy Scout or Girl Scout group would help plant as a service project. And the Lacey Museum, the Lacey Historical Society, and Lacey Park staff would have work days to help clean up and maintain the grounds. I mean, I'm curious. I can't actually ask you guys this right now, but is anybody in this picture? No, don't answer. All right. So the other big thing the Lacey Historical Society did is they worked with the Lacey School. There was a school that stood once where the Safeway is now, at the corner of Carpenter and Pacific, and they worked with the city council and city commissioners, the historic commissioners, to see if there was any way to put it on the historic register. And there was many discussions between North Thurston School District, the city, the Historical Commission, and the Historical Society about how to make that happen. And there was eventually a committee appointed, the Old Lacey School Memorial Committee. And there were so many ideas about how to save the building. But eventually, it was going to be torn down. So they decided to go in and see what they could salvage from the school, and they were successful in working with North Thurston School District to save a piece of the wood floor, 2,000 hollow bricks, 500 red bricks, 3 half-moon windows, globe light fixtures, 2 sinks, and boiler doors. And I think the importance of the bricks were they were made down in Chehalis, and they were very concerned about capturing that history. So I think between the museum and the Historical Society, they were able to take some of those items out to keep in memory. The school served the community from 1892 to 1967, and it was torn down in 1994. And I just took this picture the other day. So they worked on creating a partnership with the grocery store that was going to be built. And the QFC actually went in here, and they worked with North Thurston School District, the City Council, the Historical Commission, and the Historical Society worked together to see how they could best memorialize the school where it stood. So they put in a bell tower, which actually sounds a school bell ringing. And there's also a set of panels. And then the bricks can be seen in a couple of places, one of which is the historic markers entering Old Lacey. There's a picture of the memorial. The Lacey Historical Society would not be possible without partnerships. And so I've made a list. This is not a comprehensive list, but you can see that there are a lot of different partners that over the years the Lacey Historical Society worked with in order to promote the history of Lacey, to support the museum, to support families who'd been in the area a long time. And they worked a lot together to find ways to make history accessible to people. And I called one of my friends who is the president of the Lacey Historical Society tonight, and she said that her first memory of driving into Lacey was, this place doesn't have history. And she said it took her only a few years to find out that this place was so rich with history, because she's a researcher and an archivist, and she had so much fun finding out all the different things that Lacey had to offer as she lived here. She's lived here for 30 years now. So one of the other partnerships, just as an example, is a plaque that is in the chalet at Panorama. And this is an example of partnerships in play. So the Panorama residents, with their photographs and their stories, along with research, the Lacey Historical Society, the City of Lacey, they were able to put in a historical marker. So Lacey Historical Society members, who are they? Who are they? Who were they? Who are they? So most of them have been former city council members, former mayors, former community members, pioneer family descendants. The society ebbed and flowed over the years, depending on the memberships and connections to the city. There was a brief talk in 1986 about becoming the Friends of the Lacey Museum to avoid confusion with the Lacey Historical Commission. The Lacey Historical Commission members often became part of the society once their time on the commission was up, because they were very invested in what was going on with the society and with the history of the area. The society fought to have a place at the table with the Historic Commission, wanting to be part of the meetings, talking about fundraising, and that over time ebbed and flowed as well. They often wrote a lot of historical articles. They helped the museum and the Historical Commission put out publications and collect the history. So the Lacey Historical Society's future. One of the things that some of the activities they did in the past were they did newsletters, they had phone committees, they did fun fair, which is coming up pretty soon, plant dedication ceremonies each May, old Lacey school reunions every 2 years. They had a Founders Day at the end of June, the Thurston County Through the Decades or Thurston Throwback, the Children's Museum Idea, collecting antiques, photographs, oral histories, and written memories, and they have annual meetings. But all of these things have changed over the years. Some of those things have happened more recently. Some of them are in the past, but there's definitely a lot of their presence within this community. This is how to find us. There's an email address, a P.O. box. We have a Facebook page. And I thought it would be fun to share some memories of Lacey. I have a few of the old newsletters here, and I'm going to read a few of them just randomly, and maybe we'll take a little walk down memory lane. So one of my favorites, at least just kind of a recap of the history of the Lacey Historical Society, was the new millennium. And it's interesting, we always think about, well, when did history happen? It happened yesterday. It happened just a few moments ago. So history isn't just the really old past, but it's also something that's happening now. It's fun to look back in 2000. Does anybody remember where they were in 2000, thinking about maybe the end of the world, 1999, the end of the world, perchance, because things were about to happen? But the Lacey Historical Society put out a little publication that talked about that 18 citizens formed the Historical Society to work with the Lacey Historical Commission. The society started a tree dedication program in 1988. In 1997, there were 118 trees and ornamental shrubs that were planted and dedicated at the Remembering Place. And in 2000, there were 42 dues-paying members enrolled in the Historical Society. And I'm trying to think if they have anything else on here. No. All right. So, 1987, tree dedication. February 15th. That seems like a cold time of year for a tree dedication, but here we are. They planted an oak tree, a vine maple, a flowering Japanese cherry tree, an Oregon coast pine in memory of the first mayor of Lacey, Al Homan, a thundercloud flowering plum tree to honor the First Lady of Lacey, Anna Homan, 2 blue spruce trees, a snow fountain flowering cherry tree, a dogwood tree, were all planted on February 15th, 1987. Their goal for membership in 1987 was 100 members in 1988. And there's a little note. Have you ever gotten lost on the way to the Lacey Museum? Some people have. A letter has been requested. A letter has been sent to the Lacey Historical Commission requesting improved road signs for Lacey Museum. Too many people can't find us when they are trying. Thank you. They always say thank you. Let's see, we'll go with this one. So, 1996 Fun Fair. They will be showing citizens 1852, Isaac Wood, his land donation claim, does it overlay our city today? There will be members present to tell you more about our interesting history. Do you have a piece of our history to share? We look forward to visiting with you. Let's Go Visiting. A new feature of your newsletter is a segment called Let's Go Visiting. It was suggested by Dick Husk. We will select a person from the list of active society members and write a little something about that person's family and how the family relates to the history of Lacey. If you would like to see your family featured in the newsletter, please submit a brief history to the Lacey Historical Society. Oh, and I'm going to read the bits of interest because these are kind of fun too. Gwen Hicks suggested portions of the Society's minutes and monthly meetings be included in the newsletter. So here are a few. Members of the Lacey Historical Society are invited to apply for a position on the Lacey Historical Commission. Ask for an application at Lacey City Hall. The Society requested and received support for the Old Lacey School Bell Tower project from the Lacey Historical Commission and the Washington Retired Teachers Association. The Lacey Lamplighter Lions was the first group to give encouragement for this endeavor. A new mission statement is being drafted for the society to reflect who we are in 1996 with our historical job. The society sent a birthday card to Oli Foy in recognition of her 102nd birthday. A card from the city of Lacey was also sent, and some board members visited Oli on her birthday. Harold Skinner has faithfully continued to send all cash register receipts he received, so we may obtain a 1% discount from Stormans Corporation. Thanks to Harold for this loyalty and for his financial support in this matter. I thought this was really interesting, but I would say from about 1990 to maybe about 1999, if you saved your store receipts and turned them into the society could turn those into Stormans Corporation. I think it changed a couple other times the name, and they would actually get a percentage of the receipt as to help with the society. And there were a couple members that would collect those quite a bit, and they would always put something in the newsletter about don't forget to save your receipts. Let's see. Make sure I've got it. Okay, I'll read one more thing, but not that. Anyway, it was funny. One of the letters I brought tonight is the one that's talking about the building of the memorial from 1999 from QFC. The old Lacey School may be gone, but thanks to QFC and our North Thurston School Board members, it cannot be forgotten. The pictures on the previous page recognize the historic features of the old Lacey School. Also included elsewhere have been many bricks from the school. You will see them as planters located at the base of the bell tower. Look carefully at one planter to find a brick that has the date of December 7th, 1909 printed on it. It was found in the school basement and has been there since 1913. Historical information plaques are being proposed for placement in each of the three arches. Maybe soon we will be saying, meet you at the arches. The grand opening of the Lacey QFC is scheduled for Wednesday, September 15th, 1999. I'll do one more. Oh, this is the one. So on April 13th, 2000, rainy day fire. The Lacey Historical Neighborhood watched a controlled burn of the Stroh House by Lacey Fire District Number 3. The society had requested the burn after a 2-year decision-making study. 4 startup and pop fires gave firefighters training experiences with full team support. C Team with Captain Brian Kessler is in charge, completing the task one rainy afternoon. The fire district was pleased that they had been given the opportunity to practice their firefighting skills. I want to thank you all. There's just so much history to share. I was like, how am I going to squeeze this into 45 minutes? But I could go on and on. It's been very interesting going through the records of the Lacey Historical Society, but I think I will open it up to questions if there's any online or if there are any in the room. And I think Felicia will come around with a microphone, and I'll try to answer. Keep in mind, I've only been in the society for not even a year. So be gentle with me. Maybe just a year. Yeah.
So I've always wondered, as we walk by that, you had a photograph of the sign that says Old Lacey Historic District. There's 2 dates on it. What are those dates for?
That's a good quiz question. I have no idea. I will tell you that they do seem to coincide with 2 dates having to do with the Old Lacey School.
Yes.
And they are made with the bricks from the Old Lacey School. So I believe that has something to do with that. But I'm sure there's somebody, they're giving me thumbs up.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I'm correct? Oh my
The
goodness.
school was built in 1913, and then I believe the 1928 date is when it was remodeled and added on to.
Okay. Because I know those 2 dates pop up quite a bit when it comes to the Old Lacey School, but I was like, to see it here out of context, right? You're driving by it and you're like, what is that? What is that? Anyway, yeah, good question. Let's see if we can keep me on my toes. Yep.
My
Wait,
Hold on, we need the microphone.
hold on 1 second.
My grandfather was superintendent of Lacey School at that time. And my dad, for a while, was in there. He didn't graduate because he was moved out to Chambers Prairie. But and I had a stepson. And he was janitor for a great many of those years until he retired in about 54. He married, after his wife died, she sold their land out in Section 34 next to the Ruddle donation claim, next to. And so that's how you got lakes and timberline, is because my first grade school teacher sold them to the school district.
Nice, nice. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Got a couple over here.
So we've got one online. This person wants to know what year the QFC changed to Safeway on that site.
Also a very good question, but I can tell you how you can find out. I don't know it, but I can tell you how to find out. So our state library, which is in Tumwater, will probably have the old city directories there. And if so, they will be able to tell you when the name changed. It's possible there's information on the Secretary of State's Corporations website as well, but you have to dig through quite a bit if you're not sure exactly what date it changed. And it's hugely possible there was a newspaper article about it, because that seems like a newsworthy thing. So those are my guesses on how to find it, if it were me. All right.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate, there's a lot of information I didn't know, so I appreciate that. When I moved to Lacey, it was 9 years old, and I was on the council during the whole 90s, so I was there for that dedication, of course, with Shirley Jajic pushing all that good stuff. Curious, could you take me back to the incorporation photo that shows the 1957 aerial?
Ariel? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Could you orient me a bit? Is that Martin Way that we're looking at? The one long road?
I will admit that I have no idea. I'll admit I don't know. I was going to say Pacific Highway is probably definitely part of it, but I don't know which road is.
This guy seems to know, right over here.
Oh, wait, perfect.
We're looking at the wedge, basically. Close up where the two roads are diverging is where Pacific and Lacey Boulevard split from the western side. And up on the, toward the left margin, you can see Old Main on the hill. And there's a lot of details that could be mentioned, but we're basically looking due east along Pacific Avenue.
Quick clarification. So that road off there on the right, it's kind of going up at an angle like that with all the houses down. Is that the old Elizabeth Street?
That would be my best guess. Where that is.
What did you say Forest was? The Red Center?
Well, we're in the Phones Road area close up.
All right. I think there's a question up front here.
I was just wondering if there's a way that we could get a hold of the old newsletters.
Absolutely. In fact, I thought about bringing a box of them because there's a set of them that I'm keeping with the collection, but there's a whole lot of extra ones, shall we say, that are available. And I will ask Aaron and Felicia, I don't know. I'm trying to find a centrally located place that they could pick up old newsletters, but you know what? I might scan a few and put them up on the Facebook page. How about that? Some of the older ones. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of the older ones, but yeah, absolutely. Some of the big ones with some of the big activities, right? Yeah, absolutely. Good suggestion.
So our historical commission chair is in the online audience, and he looked up for me the year that QFC became Safeway, and that was 2001.
Awesome.
I'm not sure you'll know this, but I was wondering for what reason and when does that school bell chime in that tower in QSC?
It doesn't chime anymore.
It used to chime, and it was because it was supposed to be the beginning of the school day, is what I understand.
Yeah, 9 and 3, I think it was.
Yeah, and then the end of the school day. So it used to ring at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. But I don't think it's rung.
Oh, it was a recording, okay. And then I would have been curious about the date of at least one picture, the photograph of the officers by their cars. And I'm wondering if you just didn't think to mention it, or if you maybe just had a photograph that didn't have a date to give you.
Oh, I was just showing the building.
It's 1967.
Yeah.
It's 67.
Those are the first 3 employees of the city of Lacey. They're police officers. There wasn't enough money for the city to buy them their own police cars, so they had to use their own cars. And they got them specially approved by the Washington State Patrol so they could be used as police cars. 67.
This was in 1966, when the city incorporated. You don't flip a switch and create a whole police department or a city government. It took a while, but the 3 officers up there, the chief, D.C. Nauman on the far left, Sergeant John Gibson in the middle, and Captain Mel Journey on the far right. Those 3 officers provided police protection, if you can imagine, 24 hours, 7 days a week, until June the 1st, 1967, when the department went full tilt, had 9 officers, had a corps of 5 reserves, and a corps of 10 cadets that worked for free. I was one of those cadets. Ed came later. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Aaron, any other questions? Oh, we got another. Any other questions online? Okay.
Your first picture you showed Mullins on
Which one?
Is Patterson? Yeah, well, no.
This one?
No, the first one. There, back.
Oh, the lake. Got it.
Okay. You'll notice it's spelled Patterson. It was never called Patterson Lake. Some guys around 1970, I think it was the historical people at the time, just had to research and found out that that wasn't the correct spelling. Everybody called it Patterson Lake because that's how they talked. And I have been here for 80 years. I can see when I went back east to Maryland, everybody thought I was from Canada because I spoke like the local people here. And so Patterson Lake becomes Pattison Lake. And you'll find they have the original spelling down in, I think it's on Meridian. There's a power station where they didn't change the spelling. But that's the kind of things that went on. My grandfather and my father had down on Southwick Lake, which is about a quarter mile or half a mile, down the street from here on Mullen. And he ran this sucker from 1926 till World War II, and my dad ran the thing. It was owned by my grandfather, but when he died, my dad inherited, and I can't make a living on running from May and September every year, so he gave up the resort, And so that's how that resort disappeared. We say World War II killed it. I think just the fact that you can't make a living on 3 months of the year.
Our very short warm season, right? Thank you.
Just a clarification on the name change. So the people who took out the donation land claim there, their last name was Pattison, and it was a surveyor's error, which is why it was called Patterson for so long. And it was family descendants who asked for it to have the proper spelling of the name.
Where was the picture you have of the Woodland Hotel? Where was that located?
Where the kind of where the post office is now. Oops, let me go back the other way. That one?
Right.
It's my understanding that was kind of close to where the current the post office, that Woodland Plaza area, is named for the Woodland Hotel and Racetrack area.
So another question I have is, in the middle of the road, Lacey Boulevard becomes Pacific, they have that train depot thing, and then if you go on the bike path, the walking path back there, there's like some rail tracks. Was there like a train that went through Lacey at one time?
Yes, the Northern Pacific Railroad went through Lacey. It sure did. And I want to say I do have an older picture of that train crossing and stuff. But yeah, it was a stop on the rail.
The walking trail, the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail, is the railroad bed. Mm-hmm.
It kind of paralleled Pacific, I understand, like for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
That's a train came in from St. Paul, Minnesota.
I believe so. I mean, all trains came from, because that's the biggest, that's the biggest city between, us and, besides Spokane, I guess.
I'm from back there, that's why.
Yeah. Yep. All right. There's no more questions.
I actually have a question.
Oh, yes. I do have a couple things I want to say before I close, though, too.
I was curious, through all your research on the society, what was the most interesting thing that you found?
That's a good question. I think the most interesting thing I found is how they were able to work together. I mean, you think about nowadays when you go to with all of our modern conveniences to rally people together, there's so many more options. But this society was tiny but mighty, and they had a way of gathering people together from the QFC people who are building a. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? To have them add a bell tower to their design, architects, everything. I thought that was pretty impressive.
I know this isn't part of your presentation, but right now, could you explain a little bit about the way that the Historical Society is, that we need help and we need it fast?
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing before I closed out, because that way it's in memoriam, it'll be online forever and ever. So I do have the end date. I mean, I have an end date on the presentation as 2013 because that is this year. But I didn't leave it open because at the moment the society's in trouble. There's not a lot of people left on the society, and there's not enough volunteers. It is a volunteer group, and there's not enough volunteers right now to keep it going. We lost our treasurer and our vice president at the end of 2022. We're going to lose our president and our secretary at the end of May. And there's no officers, so that leaves no one to run the society. And so that's why, let me see if I can fast forward through this. That's why I'm offering this up as a, getting close to the end here. There we go. So contact information. We are really looking for people to email, and if this is something you're interested in, I brought a pen and paper. If you would like to leave your email address, you can be added to the emails. Typically, the society does not meet until September again, as they plan their annual meeting. The annual meeting's date has been set as tentative, but it has not been confirmed. And of course, to plan a party, you have to have people. So there's also a possibility there won't be an annual meeting. It's hard to say. I stepped in as an acting treasurer just because it seemed like the nice thing to do at the moment, but it's I am actually well and truly spread thin, and my husband is looking for jobs out of town, so I may not be around for much longer. And with our other two officers leaving at the end of the month, that leaves one board trustee left to carry on the legacy. And what they really need is 12 people. More people, the merrier. It's always helpful to share the wealth, share the work, enjoy working together. And so the society is looking for someone, some people to step up and become part of the society and keep the society going. The other option is we will dissolve. So, yep.
I think it's kind of important for people to understand that this just kind of happened. It wasn't, there was a problem. There was no problem except the president is moving to Vermont, and then the other people are having health problems. It wasn't a problem with the society at all. They're very cohesive.
They're a fun group of people, howbeit dwindling, fun group of people. So, yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for your talk tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this season. We will see you in our next season in September. All right, have a good night, everyone.